Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. I am one of your co-hosts, Chris Bixby, and with me today is our other co-host, Matt Bingel, and our host, Jake Deffinbaugh. How are you both?
Doing great, Chris. How about you?
How you doing?
I am wonderful as well.
Wonderful.
It's great to hear. So what do we have?
Our guest for today, he is a musician and singer-songwriter who was the lead singer of the band The Bad Examples and is also the lead singer of the children's music group Ralph's World, and we're here to talk about both of those and some of the projects he's done with Disney, his work with Kellogg's and Huggies. We're here to talk about a lot of those things, and here he is, Ralph Covert. Ralph, how are you?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yes,
Of course.
pleasure.
We're very excited to have you here.
Happy to have you on. So to kind of kick this off, I know I introduced you a bit already, but could you kind of introduce yourself a bit and what you do?
Sure. I'm singer, songwriter, playwright, children's book author, composer, performer, producer. First kind of came to public attention in the late 80s and in the 90s with my rock band, The Bad Examples. And we had a great run, toured coast to coast in America, toured over in Europe. I also started playwriting then, wrote Sawdust and Spangles and Streeterville, both of which won Jeff Awards, which is a Chicago version of a Tony for Best New Work. And then I've also written a number of children's musicals as well, which have been produced nationwide. One of them's even run off Broadway. And
nice.
Right around the 2000s, I started making, I'd been teaching some little kids music classes, and it kind of blossomed into a career doing kids music. And Ralph's World was born and kind of revolutionized kids music, because before that, no one had ever considered the idea of making kids music that the parents liked. Like, kind of seemed odd to me. And so it really blew up. And Grammy nominated, ended up being on Disney for a while, got to do lots of cool stuff with that. That's what sparked the kids musicals. And since then, I've just continued to do a little bit of everything. Do both of those projects. I also do stuff as Ralph Covert, which is more acoustic-based stuff. I do a lot of shows these days with a string quartet and acoustic guitar, which is a lot of fun. And just get to continue to be creative and make new music and have a lot of fun.
Nice.
Nice, awesome. So what was your background like and how do you grew up?
My dad was an engineer. My mom was a ceramist and potter. Always had a workshop in the basement. My youngest sister was borderline Down syndrome, so I think a lot of my parents' energy and focus ended up on her. I just kind of was a very creative kid, even from the earliest ages. I remember a funny story is in second grade, it was career month, and every morning one boy and one girl would go up in front of the class and say, "When I grow up, I want to be a nurse. When I grow up, I want to be a fireman." And I said, "When I grow up, I want to create things." And my teacher, who did not like me at all, said, "No, I'm sorry, Scotty." They called me Scott then. "I'm sorry, Scotty. You need to have a job." And I said, "Oh, well, when I grow up, my job will be that I create things," which kind of is what I do. One of those rare moments where I thought of the right singer at the right moment. Usually you think of it the next day. So then that's kind of, so I had a very, read tons and tons of books. I used to write songs constantly when I was a kid. I'd be making up little plays all the time as a kid, writing little. I read a lot, so I wrote my little books. I was trying to write some novel or another, and I just always loved doing that. And I was always getting into some kind of trouble in school, but never for being a troublemaker. Always for refusing to go along with authority, or just having some cockamamie idea that made perfect sense to me. And then, I remember I got in trouble in kindergarten because I refused to paint we were making caterpillars for monarch butterflies out of egg cartons, and I refused to paint it the same color as all the other kids.
Oh, wow.
And this
Oh my
was
gosh.
back in the day. I got sent home because the teacher said, "You need to do it," and I said, "No." They're like, "Teacher, no, you're not.
No.
No, not the way mine looks." So, or in high school, I got in all kinds of trouble in high school because I was on the student newspaper, and I was always either doing some kind of an investigative journalist piece, or I would do something like one day because I was on the newspaper and because I was good at kissing ass with the advisor, I had a permanent laminated hall pass. So I was the only kid in the school that could go anywhere, anytime between classes because I had a permanent hall pass. And one day I was in college, I turned out to be an English major. So this made perfect sense. I went around to all the bathrooms in the entire school and transcribed every piece of poetry on every bathroom wall in the entire school, and then did a literary analysis of them all, analyzing the kind of poetic rhythms that we're using, the most common rhyme schemes, which animals were used metaphorically to compare people to different animals, and just did an article in the student newspaper with all the bathroom poetry analyzed as if it was a literary paper. And I got in trouble for that.
Oh my God.
Oh, crazy.
So I was always pushing the
There we go.
Oh man.
So how were you inspired to get into the music industry?
when I went to, I always kind of, like I said, I've been making up songs. I went to summer camp, and as a little kid, one year, my summer camp counselor played side one of the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album incessantly, over and over and over and over again. And he played the Beach Boys' Little Old Lady from Pasadena, the 45 of that. He played the side one of Sgt. Pepper's and Little Old Lady from Pasadena. And by the end of summer camp, I knew what I wanted to do. I was going to write songs and be a musician. I knew what the rest of my life was. And the only confusing thing that came out of that is it took me, because I came home, and the first thing I did is I bought a cassette copy of Sgt. Pepper's. And I was disappointed, confused, because it took me years to figure out why the Little Old Lady from Pasadena song wasn't on the album. I assumed it was part of the same record because those are the songs he played. Side one of Sgt. Pepper and the Little Old Lady from Pasadena. So my copy didn't have the Beach Boys song on it, which was strange to me at the time. But other than that, I came home from camp and knew what I wanted to do with my life.
Awesome.
Awesome. So before Ralph's World, you founded the indie rock band, the Bad Examples. How did that come about?
When I finished the end of college, I knew my three passions in college had really been acting and fiction writing. I went to the University of Iowa and did some of even as an undergrad, they let me do some graduate classes with the Writers' Workshop there, which was very generous of them. And then music and songwriting. So when I got to the end of college, and I even student taught. I got an education certification as well because I thought maybe I'll do that as a backup plan. Got to the end of college and I'm like, okay, now what do I want to do? And I really I took 3 months and really thought hard about all the things I'd been pursuing, and it kind of decided that I felt at that point in my life that I had more to say through music and songwriting than fiction writing and acting. Acting, you're often using other people's words, and I really wanted to be creating my own narratives. I felt like life experience wise, my life experiences maybe were more, could be more succinctly expressed in a song. I didn't think I had lived enough to really be a great novelist at that point. And so I decided that music was going to be my path. And so I got out of college and then kind of came back home to my parents' house in the Chicago suburbs, and just started trying to figure out everything I could about what does it mean, and how do you support yourself as a musician? How do you put a band together? How do you get booked in clubs? How do you do this? And so it took me the next 2-3 years to kind of figure a lot of those pieces out. I moved into the city and started playing solo acoustic gigs. Well, I tried to figure out, what does it mean to be a musician? How do you do this? It's not like I went to Berkeley or some music school where they say, here's how you put a band together, here's how you book your band. It's not, and back then there wasn't the internet. You couldn't just look it up and say, well, here's how you do it. You really had to figure it out yourself. Yeah. And that's what I did. And so by 1987, I graduated in 84. And by 1987, I put the first lineup of the Bad Examples together, and almost immediately started, like within the same week as our first gig, I booked the band into a recording studio to both make a demo of the band that we could share to get gigs. But then I was always a big believer in having, because I'd always loved albums, I was always a big believer in having product, having something that if somebody loved the music, you could put it in their hands and say, here it is, make it part of your life. So we literally, the Bad Examples first album, Meet the Bad Examples, we recorded the same week as our first gig. And then I literally, I Xeroxed the covers myself, duplicated the cassettes myself on my cassette, on a dual deck cassette player. And started, actually back in the early days, in those early Bad Examples shows, this was kind of before the whole AIDS thing and the whole safe sex thing had really taken off. So condoms were very taboo. You could only get a condom at the drugstore, and people didn't really talk about them. It was very, you just didn't mention it in polite company. So what I did was on every, because the band was the Bad Examples, and that seemed kind of saucy, on every cassette, I taped a condom. So beginning of the night, I'd be selling a cassette with a condom attached. And I found by the end of the night, these bars were playing, I'd be selling a condom with a cassette attached.
Oh, that's great. So now in terms of the Bad Examples, did you have any favorite songs that you sang with them?
Well, Not Dead Yet is probably our most popular song, was our biggest hit back in the day. The band Styx actually did a cover of it. It was, at the time, it was the only song they'd ever recorded that they didn't write. Only cover song they ever did. But I mean, I couldn't say there's a favorite. It was really kind of maybe Beatley influenced, a good rock beat with good melodies, and lyrics were about real people, real emotions. Kind of, I was an English major, so I could be telling stories in my songs.
Definitely.
So with the Bad Examples, you got to tour with other bands, including Los Lobos, Lemonheads, and even BB King. Did you have any favorite bands to tour with?
Actually, BB King was one of my favorite moments. Obviously, I've always been a huge fan of Chicago blues. I'm not a blues musician. I can play the blues, but I've always loved the blues. When we were recording my solo album, Eat It Godot's, we wanted to do a session down at Sun Studios in Memphis, Tennessee. So we booked a day at Sun, and we drove down. My producer, Michael Freeman, and myself, and Chuck Troika, the executive producer, and Mike Byrne, our tour manager. We drove down to Memphis, and we got in the night before, and we wanted to stop by Sun Studios and just check out the layout of what we were going to be doing the next day. And there we called. They said, "Well, we're busy right now. There's a thing going on, but we'll be done at 8. So you maybe want to get some barbecue and come by after we wrap our session." I'm like, "Okay." So we got some barbecue, and we stopped by 8 o'clock at Sun Studios, and it wasn't a traditional recording session that was going on. It was actually this British documentary filmmaker was doing a documentary on B.B. King.
Oh, wow.
And so King set up of Sun Studios. He's got Lucille in his lap, and he's been, talking and playing with all the cameras and all the lights around him. So we show up just as they're wrapping, they're tearing down the tracks and the lights, and he's just kind of sitting dazed in his chair. He's been there all day while they're doing this documentary interview stuff with him. And we come in and kind of respectfully just kind of get a sense for what the room is like. And he sees us, and he's like, "Oh, you're the folks that are here tomorrow. Oh, wow." And he's like, "Pardon me, I'm just, this is my first moment to sit and take in the room all day. And I haven't been in this room in, 35 years. I haven't set foot in this room since 1957. He's like,
"Oh my gosh.
I remember the last night I was in this room." And you can, how that you, when you relive a memory and you're like seeing it in front of your eyes, and you can just describe what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He did that, right? He's like,
"Oh my God."
Remember, B.B. King was a child star. He had his first hit record at 13. So when Elvis came up on the scene, B.B. was already an established, hit maker. He wasn't of age, so he had a driver. He had a driver that drive him to and from gigs because he was not of age to drive a car yet.
Wow.
Gosh.
So he's like, it was a rainy night, and I was driving home from my show, and I saw there's a light on in the studio, and I said to my driver, "Pull over. I want to see what's going on inside tonight, because I hadn't been here in a while. I made some records here, but I said, there's something going on. I want to stop in and say hi." So he come in, and the piano wasn't there. The piano was over there. The piano was there, and there was a lamp by it. Yeah, and Elvis and Carl Perkins were at the piano, and I hadn't seen Elvis in a couple of months then, because he was starting to take off, and he'd been busy, and I'd always kind of giving him advice and stuff. So I went over, and Carl was playing one of his new songs on the piano, and he was showing Elvis his new song. It might have been Blue Suede Shoes, I'm not sure, but he'd just written this new song, and he was showing Elvis. And then I was asking them how their shows were, and they were talking to me, and he's like detailing this whole line of telling the line. And then Elvis said, "Oh, how is that girl you've been seeing from Spencer? I was dating a girl from Spencer, and how is she doing? She's a cutie." And I was like, "Oh, I haven't seen her in a while, but there's plenty of girls out there." And Carl goes, "Oh, I know there's plenty of girls out there." And we're talking, he's just relaying this whole conversation.
Oh, that's great.
And then he comes and he goes, "I am so sorry. How selfish of me. You are here as a working man to get the lay of the land of the studio, and here I am just filling your ear with a bunch of blabber. Because it's so disrespectful. I'm so sorry." We're like, we're not worthy. And I'll let you do the work you need to do, and I hope you have a blessed session tomorrow. I'm going to be thinking about you, and I really hope you have a an amazing recording session here. There's a lot of good memories in this room for me, and I hope you can make some good memories tomorrow. And then we're like,
that is so.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's fantastic.
That is so awesome.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Here's the crazy
That's
thing.
wonderful.
I didn't see him again until the Bad Examples got the chance to open for him at the Cubby Bear in Chicago, probably trying to think who was in the band at the time, 2 or 3 years later.
Oh,
I didn't
wow.
see
Oh, that's cool.
Couple years later, we have a show opening for him, and I'm just thrilled to be on the same stage with him. I'm just thrilled to be there.
Of course.
And so we get there, and he's sound checking, and sitting in his chair on the stage, and because he's getting up in years, and they sound check, and then we're waiting for them to get their stuff off, and waiting on the side of the stage so we can set ourselves up in front, trying to be as respectful and polite as we can with with them. And he stands up and he sees me from across the stage, and he goes, "Ralph!"
Oh my God.
Oh,
that's great.
Walking across the room, and just wraps his arms around me. He goes, "Ralph!" He's like, "Ralph, I was hoping How did the session go?"
Oh my
gosh.
He remembered me and remembered the freaking sessions. I remember. How was your session at Sun? I've always wondered. It was such a pleasure meeting you, and I've been keeping an eye on you, and it's so good that you're here today. I'm so grateful that we get to share the stage with you. We're like, we're grateful to say the same to you. He said, "Well, then everybody's going to be happy."
Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
That is great.
That's amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, how did that recording session at Sun go? I'm curious.
It went amazing. An interesting thing about that room, and it's one of the reasons why records that are made there sound so good, is the shape of the room. Okay, there's a thing for the listeners that don't have studio experience. There's a thing called a compressor. A compressor is something that limits the peaks of how loud the sound gets. So when you guys are making your podcast, when we're doing stuff in the studio, if there's an instrument that, or somebody speaking where their voice gets really loud and then really gets really quiet, you want to make it so that's kind of a similar volume level, and you do that by running it through a compressor that kind of narrows the frequency, it narrows the dynamic range so that you can then raise the level to where you want it without it getting too loud or too quiet, right? So one of the things about the studio, the live room at Sun Studios, is it's shaped with the ceiling sloping up, and something to do with the size of the room and the way that it's built. The room kind of acts as a natural compressor. Right? I found that it did for me, so that when I was singing in it, I could the sound of the room when I was performing in it with my acoustic guitar and vocal, the sound and the way the sound filled the room and came back to me within it helped balance and compress what I was doing, so that it made it really easy to record and get good sounding recordings because of the shape and sound of that room. So that's kind of, but as a result of that, it made for a really, really productive songwriting, or a really productive session. We'd hoped on getting, 4 or 5 songs recorded, and I think we ended up recording 12 or 13 songs that we were really happy with. And we actually, it's interesting, we had so many good takes of so many songs, we ended up running out of tape before we ran out of time. So it was a really productive session, and a lot of those recordings ended up being some of the ones that we then added overdubs and built on with the Edith Godot's record. Anna Brago and My Dog Has Been Barking and Small Gray Rain. A lot of my favorite songs off the Edith Godot's record, which is the one we were making at the time, ended up being the ones that we'd recorded at Sun Studios, because it was such a magical experience recording in that room.
Wow.
Oh yeah.
And it told us to have a good session, so we damn well better have.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
Definitely. So now currently with the bad examples, you've done some live streaming shows. Can you kind of talk a bit about that and when those shows kind of take place?
Yeah. So maybe a week or so into the COVID shutdown, I was feeling pretty at loose ends. And as we all were, right? And the thought struck me, I can't be alone in this feeling of drifting, of being unmoored. And so I started doing some live streaming shows. I think the first ones were like Ralph's World focused. I would do some shows in the morning of Ralph's World stuff. And then I started adding some evening shows of bad examples and Ralph Covert stuff. I did it for two reasons. One, because I felt like people probably would appreciate having something consistent that they could go to, right? And second, it scared the shit out of me, the idea of doing it. And I've always been a big believer that if I can step out of my comfort zone, then there's probably something good to be discovered. And the idea of like just broadcasting, singing songs with nobody there in the room, but to my phone, it scared the shit out of me. And I'm like, well, if this is scaring me, then I should do it to see what lies on the other side of that.
To kind of challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the ways I try to challenge myself. If something puts me out of my comfort zone, I kind of make a point of trying it.
Right.
And so I started doing it, and it really became an important community. It was really transformational for me. And at the peak of it, there are thousands of people watching, and there's still it goes on to this day. It's a smaller core group, but it made a real difference in people's lives. And it was interesting too, because the early Staycation shows, people wanted to hear the hits, right? Then after they been hearing the hits, then they started, because I would let the audience, I early on started letting the audience pick the songs. For me, if I was like, I wanted it to be an equal conversation. I didn't want it to be me being, hey, here I am, here's my data. I want to be like, here we all are, what do you guys want to hear? What do you want? And so the audience would pick the songs. So early on, it was, which actually that kind of came from a thing I started doing about 10 years before. I would do a thing once a month at this Club Fitzgerald's called the Acoustic Army, where I was trying to have that same idea of reinventing what it meant to be a band and be a musician. And the Acoustic Army was, I would encourage the audience members to bring musical instruments if they wanted. The audience members picked the songs. If the audience members wanted to come play along with me, they could. If they wanted to sit at their table and play along with me, they could. If they just wanted to sit, they could. So it was like an attempt at it kind of reinventing what it meant to be a live musician in that inclusive way. So I kind of added that audience picking thing to what became known as my Staycation shows, is what I ended up calling the streaming shows. So initially people wanted all the hits, but then as they're getting the hits, then they started wanting the deep album cuts, the songs on the albums that weren't the hits. And then they started wanting the songs that were unreleased that never made it onto an album. And then they started wanting new songs. So it was really great. As time went on, it became a great reason to be writing and sharing new music. And I was singing and playing every day, right? 2 times a day when I was doing the Ralph's World stuff in the morning. And of course, as we know, that it wasn't just a couple of months, it just went on and on and on and on. So by the time COVID got done, my guitar playing and my songwriting and I added like 5 or 6 notes to the top of my vocal range.
Wow.
My guitar playing and, you know, bass playing is far better than it's ever been in my entire career. And found this great community of people all across the country that I'm still in close contact with. And, you know, because of they're always clamoring for new songs, the last couple of years I've written so many songs, and it's been a really great creative journey. So I stream the Bad Examples shows live as part of just that ongoing ethos and idea of sharing it with the people that are, you know, coast to coast that are part of that community.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome.
Long answer, but probably answers the right.
No, it's fine.
no
No,
worries.
it's fine. It's fine.
We can accept long answers.
Yes.
We
Long
can.
answers are good. You know, it's good to,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I can absolutely relate as well. I can relate to all that.
Of course.
Wait, what?
I said, then get down to yes.
Yes.
Simply yes.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I can absolutely relate to that as well. Because hey, drinker, I also do streams. I've been doing streaming now for I guess almost 3 years now, and I've also created like a community of wonderful people. And
Oh yeah, it's a great community.
Oh,
Wonderful.
yes. Oh my
Wonderful.
gosh. Yes.
Yeah, because Matt's in the puppetry community, and he does
really?
he does a lot of
Yep,
Instagram
me
lives
too.
with a few of his puppetry
Yep.
friends.
Yep, been doing that almost 3 years now. We hit our 3rd anniversary of our show in early May. So
Yeah, and
a lot of fun with puppetry stuff with the doing the TV Treehouse stuff.
oh yeah,
Also.
right, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and with the podcast we've interviewed a few of his puppetry friends. We've also interviewed a lot of the puppeteers who are like well known on like Sesame Street and the Muppets.
Mm-hmm.
So
and some children's entertainers as well.
yeah, so we've interviewed a lot of people in that circle.
Yeah,
a lot of people in that circle.
Yeah, like for example, Louis Berkner, Dan Collier Zanes.
Yep. Genevieve.
Yeah.
Genevieve is great. I love her. Dan's a dear.
She was amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Back before either of us took off. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
Claudia boat.
Huh.
You know.
Oh yeah, Claudia. Yeah, Claudia is great.
Claudia
Oh yeah.
Claudia's
we
amazing.
got the pilot for the original pilot for TV Treehouse. We had Jim Krupa and
Oh.
Pam.
Wow.
What's her name? That's Kermit's right arm. She was Ronnie, and Jim was Beauregard on the original pilot. So it's great to work with that caliber.
Pam Arciero.
Yeah.
So moving on to Ralph's World, how did that start up?
Well, in the 90s, I had started teaching some songwriting classes at the Old Town School of Folk Music in Chicago. And then when my daughter Fiona was born, the gal who's in charge of they have a program called Wiggle Worms. It's like a mom and tots classes. The gal in charge of that asked if I would be interested in doing Wiggle Worm classes. I, of course, no, that I had no interest. And she said, well, try it out. Tell you what, you can bring your daughter with you and just consider it a way to get paid to have play days and meet other parents. And I was like, okay, I can try that. Because normally you couldn't bring your kids to classes, but she kind of twisted my arm on it.
I recommend do that.
I found I really enjoyed it. But then when I found out that her secret plan had been, but Jackie Russell's this gal's name. Jackie hired me to be a Wiggle Worms teacher. She was the head of the children's programming and Wiggle Worms there at the school, and she was sick to death of it because it was kind of just the same old stuff and the same old boring old nursery rhyme crap. And this is like 85 or 95, 96. And what she did was she hired me to be a Wiggle Worms instructor. And then she started going around to all the top singer-songwriters around Chicago and saying, wow, hey, do you want to come and teach Wiggle Worms classes? And they were all like, what? No. I'm an indie rock.
Yeah, I can.
I'm a major folk artist. I'm a singer-songwriter. And then she go, oh yeah, but Ralph Covert is doing it. And they go, oh, Ralph Covert's doing it? Oh, well, maybe I should check it out then. So she used my name as the bait. And she confessed this to me years later. She used my name as the hook to change over their entire faculty of the people doing the Wiggle Worms classes. She got like, you know, Rob Newhouse is Rob Elvis of the Elvis Brothers. She got people that were on Bloodshot Records. She got people that went on, a friend of mine who went on to write with Madonna and Farrell and people like that in LA as a song.
Oh,
you got people to be Julie Frost is her name, to be teaching Wiggle Worm classes because by leveraging my name. It's like, because the Bad Examples, we were the biggest act in town. We were very, very popular. So if I was doing it, then people are like, well, if Ralph Covert's doing it, I should try it.
Yeah, like if she only mentioned the Wiggle Worm process, they'd be like, "What?" But if she mentioned your name, be like, "Oh, okay, okay." I think I'll do that.
Yeah.
So I started doing the Wiggle Worm classes, and I found I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed kind of the environment, but for me, I wasn't approaching it, and I wasn't approaching it like any of her other teachers were. I wasn't doing, Old MacDonald Had a Farm. I was doing, if this I was playing rock and roll. I would do The Kids Are All Right by The Who because it talks about kids, right?
Right.
The Kids Are All Right.
Yeah.
Kids song. Or I would do this one little boy wanted songs about spiders, so I played Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. About spiders. And I'd be standing on my chair and singing and playing at the top of my lungs and just having a. Remember, I was a kid that was sent to the principal office from kindergarten through high school. So I was one day she comes up to me in the hall. She's like, Ralph, I understand you've been doing things like playing David Bowie songs in your Wiggle Worms classes. And I'm like, she's going to fire me. I said, yes, I have. She's like, excellent. That's why I hired you.
That's wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
But as a result, I was having fun with the moms, having fun with the kids. It was I was just having rock and roll fun. I wasn't trying to be a kids musician. I was just being myself, goofing off. And I'm naturally a songwriter first. So I started making up songs that we could do together.
Right.
Like the coffee song, my famous Ralph's World songs, M-O-M-M-Y need C-O-F-F-E-E. I come into one of my classes. What my routine was, I had 3 classes in the morning. I had a 2 to 3 year old class, then a 1 to 2 year old class, and then a 6 month to 1 year class, something like that. Anyway, so I do the morning class, I do the first class, and then I would zip down to the corner to the Starbucks to buy myself a cup of coffee, and then I'd nurse the cup of coffee over the next 2 classes. That way I could do 3 classes in a row, and the caffeine would be in the middle and kind of arch me over, right?
Right.
So I zip down to Starbucks after the first class and get back just in time for the second class. And I did that one day, and this particular group of moms were all, shall we say, having a morning. All of their kids in this particular class, these kids were pistols, and they were just, the moms were uniformly frazzled. And I walk in the room with my cup of coffee, and this one mom looks at me, and she said, Ralph, it's not fair. You've got coffee, we've got kids and no coffee. the least you could do is sing us a goddamn coffee song. And I'm like, and I made up the coffee song on the top of my head right there. I was like, M-O-M-M-Y needs C-O-F-F-E-E-D-A-D-D-Y needs C-O-F. And they're like, okay.
Oh gosh.
So then at a certain point, a fella comes into the class. It's the dad of one of the boys I've had. And it's a guy named Jim Powers who ran Chicago's Minty Fresh Records, a kind of a hip indie label that had had a lot of success in the 90s with bands like Veruca Salt and the Aluminum Group and, you know, kind of a hipster label. And he said, Ralph, I didn't know you were Brendan's music teacher. His wife was sick with the flu, so he brought their son in. I said, Jim, I didn't know Brendan was your son. He said, we should have breakfast, have a lunch sometime and talk about stuff. I said, sure. Because I'm thinking I want to maybe I can put the bad examples out on Minty Fresh. I'm like, I could have a conversation with you. And he goes, do you want to put out a kids record? And I said, no. Fuck. I said, I have no interest in
no.
putting out a crappy kids record. They're just not, they're not interesting. He's like, well, what would you be interested in doing for kids? I'm like, I said, I would be interested in making a great album that kids loved, but not a kids album. And he goes, oh my God, you just cracked the code. So that's what we set out to do, not make a kids record with Ralph's World, but to make a great album that kids loved. And from doing my Wiggle Worms classes, I had a real strong sense because I was basically workshopping songs, you know, every morning with these moms and kids. When you're playing a new song in front of 10 moms and 10 1 or 2 year olds, you know, in about 5 seconds if you have their attention or if you don't, right?
Right.
And so my goal every day when I was going to bring new songs into Wiggle Worms was like, what do I need to do with writing this song so that all 10 kids are engaged and all 10 moms are engaged? If I can hold the attention of 10 kids and 10 moms for, you know, 50 minutes straight, then it made my life a lot easier. If I couldn't hold their attention, then kids are getting distracted and they're getting cranky. The moms are getting bored. They're talking to each other. They're getting annoyed. I don't want that. I like being liked. So for me, it was a challenge of what can I do in this class so that 10 kids that I have time. So that's how I learned to kind of the same thing with the bad examples at clubs. How do I keep this audience connected for 3 hours? What show audience wanted to go, right? Same thing with the Wiggle Worms class. And so that's what we did with the album. It's like I said, okay, let's have great. I can bring great songs. I'm experienced in the studio. Let's get the best players in the city, musicians. Let's go to a great recording studio and work with the best people there. And let's approach this like an indie rock record. And then let's not release it like a kid's record. You know indie rock. I know indie rock. Let's release this like an indie rock record. Let's do press like it's an indie rock record. Let's tour like it's an indie rock record. You know, back then, kids artists weren't doing in-store appearances like Borders and things. That was an indie rock thing. Kids artists didn't do that. So, but we called up Borders and we said, you know, we want to do in-store appearances in Borders like the way we do with these indie rock things. So I did like probably, you know, over the course of the years, 400 or 500 Borders in stores back when there was a Borders.
Oh yeah.
Similarly,
Gosh.
you know, similarly, because you know, with indie rock, you were in Tower Records, you were in Borders, you were in Rolling Stone, you were, you know, you were doing in stores to help the stores sell the records and the CDs, and to get in front of and make new fans.
Oh yeah.
And then the other thing we did is we called up rock clubs and we said, what are you doing at 11 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday? Nothing. Let's do a full band rock show for kids. You're gonna have juice boxes for the toddlers, Bloody Marys and beers for the parents, and we'll come in and we'll rock from 11 to 12. And so that's what we did. And every single club that we talked to had never done that before. And we would talk into it, it would be successful, and they would start doing it every week. It became a thing. So we really approached kids music as if it was the world we knew, and no one had ever done that before. And no one had ever tried to make kids music that now, I mean, there's a word for it now, kindy music, right? But that wasn't early 2000s, it didn't exist. And then, I was doing it, and then folks like Dan and Lori found out about it, and they started following in my footsteps with it, and it just became a thing. And then now there's hundreds of artists all around the country who do it. And and in fact, I think it's the only way people can think of doing it now.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
Right. It's crazy. I mean, the fact that what we did, we completely transformed a genre of music from being one thing to being another thing. It's just cool.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So similarly, do you have any favorite children's songs you performed?
Well, one of the things that we did with the Ralph's World Records is we were constantly pushing the limit on what could be considered a kid's song. And I think if you dig through the catalog on Spotify or something, you can hear some examples of that. Like the song "The Amazing Adventures of Kid Astro" off of the album of the same title. It's like Queen meets Paul McCartney. It's like Bohemian Rhapsody meets Live and Let Die. It's this piece of gigantic, bombastic pop, right? Or you look at the song like "I Don't Wanna" off of the Green Gorilla album. It's a straight ahead Sex Pistols punk song. So we had a lot of fun. Or when we did this song "Surfing in My Imagination," we found on the Beach Boys, we got access to the multi-tracks of some of the Beach Boys recordings, and we literally went in and listened to how they stacked their harmonies so that we could then go in the studio and stack the harmonies in the same way, and also use the same type reverbs and compression effects that they did, so that our song would actually, from a studio context, be true to the music, just as I was, I'm singing a surf song, but what can we do to honor, all the elements of that work? So, I'm really, I have so many favorite songs across. I love probably my favorite albums are, I love the Rhyming Circus album. I think that was
that's a good one.
And I'm really proud of Time Machine Guitar, which is my last album. There's some stuff on there like Gato Negro, which is like an Afro-Cuban thing with congas and jazz horns. That's
cool. Okay.
really, really fun. One of my favorites on the Time Machine Guitar is there's a song called Beethoven's Horse. And a cool fact that not a lot of people know is that Mozart and Haydn, the two famous romantic composers, Amadeus Mozart and Joseph Haydn, were best friends.
Oh, okay. Wow. Interesting.
They were best friends.
Oh.
They invented the string quartet. They were the first people. They invented the string quartet because they would get together every Sunday afternoon after the church stuff that they had any obligations for things that they'd composed or were conducting. Sunday afternoons and evenings every week, Haydn, Mozart, and two other friends of theirs that were Viennese composers would get together and play string, play violin and viola and cello together for fun and drink wine. So
Wow.
Haydn and Mozart wrote their string quartets to play with their friends. It was for they literally they invented the cello, viola, two violins, because that's what their four friends had played. So they could get together and they would write string quartets so they could get together and play them together. So and Beethoven actually moved to Vienna because he really wanted to study composition with Mozart. So these three major figures have this deep connection together and a connection to the string quartet. So I wrote the song Beethoven's Horse. It's kind of a simple story song. The first verse, Mozart and Haydn are walking down the street, and Haydn says, "Oh, I wrote a new string quartet. I wrote a new piece." And Haydn says, "Oh, let me hear it." And so then the first interlude of the song is that same melody of the verse, but arranged as a Haydn string quartet. And then the second verse, Mozart says, "Oh," because Mozart was like, he loved jamming, he loved like improvising. Mozart says, "Oh, that's really cool. Can I try it? Can I play around with it?" And Haydn says, "Yeah, I stole Beethoven's horse and I have his piano on it." And Mozart says, "Oh." Then Mozart up on the horse and plays like the second musical interlude is structured like a Mozart, usually the same melody but evolving, so it sounds like a piece that Mozart would have composed. And then the third verse, Beethoven comes running out going, "Somebody stole my horse!" and Haydn says, and Haydn was a practical joker, so he probably would have stolen Beethoven's horse. He was a Haydn loved practical jokes, and Mozart loved poop humor. So these were like real highbrow guys. So Haydn says, "Oh, I've got your horse here with a piano on it. Why don't you jump up and play us something?" So then the third musical interlude is the same melody, but done in the style of a Beethoven piano concerto. So over the course of the song, you hear the same verse melody as Haydn would have played it, as Mozart would have as where classical music, where Mozart took the music to as a composer, and then where Beethoven took it. So, kind of showing the history of music within the piece of music.
Nice.
So that's
nice.
Awesome.
So I'm always trying to find ways to kind of, what can you do in music that no one's ever done?
Yeah.
So now of course we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but how did it feel for your songs to be a part of Playhouse Disney for several years? Because that was such a big kids network.
Yeah, no, it was great. The people that I worked with at Disney were wonderful. They were not a great company when it came to building and developing things. They were much better at harvesting things. They're better at once the big spigot of money in the wall turns on, they're really good at filling up the buckets and moving it over to the trough. But they weren't as good, say, as Minty Fresh was at the mechanics of turning on the spigot. I think because they were so used to anything. So that was the disappointment with it, is that it didn't go to the next level from there. But the other piece with that too is right around that time, nationally, kids music changed to becoming more about appealing to tweens. And so I think that may have been a factor as well. It's a whole different kids music for 4 to 6 year olds, or 5 to 8 year olds, or 3 to 8 year olds is different than kids music for 8 to 12 year olds.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And so on the Disney Channel and Nickelodeon, there's things shifted up, and then on the stuff like that they were getting the biggest. I think it also kind of shifted down to the really baby stuff.
Mm.
So it kind of left what I was doing in the middle that was connecting. Didn't it kind of grew away from that middle zone?
Mm.
I think it was great. It was great working with the Disney folks. But you know, and it was great being on the channel, and a lot of great opportunities came. You know, first ever national House of Blues kids tour. Worked, you know, with Kellogg's, with Rice Krispies. That was really an but then things were really still building and growing. The thing that really kind of knocked things off the track was what Rhyming Circus came out, I guess the summer of 2008 or 2009. And Disney really they really put a lot of weight behind it. They'd booked like 100-show tour, me, Dan Zanes, Imagination Movers.
Yes, which we also previously interviewed Scott Durbin, one of the members of Imagination Movers.
Yeah. So this was their first big tour. But it was the summer that the economy collapsed. The summer right before the economy collapsed. So that spring, literally, it was on track to be the biggest touring summer in the history of the music business. And by mid-June, tour after tour after tour was just shutting down and going home because of lack of ticket sales, and nobody knew why. But then that fall, all of a sudden, everybody knew why when the economy just went. But it was like kind of that summer's touring schedule was like, you know, when there's a rainstorm and that cold front comes in right before it, and then you know it's going to rain. That's that's what that summer was like. At the time, it made no sense, you know. And for the Playhouse Disney tour that we were a part of, you know, they had nearly 100 shows booked coast to coast. And after the first 2 cities of the tour, they shut the whole thing down, except for the very last show at the end of the tour in the fall. So that, you know, we ended up playing like 9 shows out of 100. And that was the big push for Rhyming Circus, was that big tour. That was the central big part of their marketing for that album. So Rhyming Circus kind of was one of those albums that got fell victim to the vagaries of the market, which is a pity, because I think it's a great album. But I continued to be with Disney and have good relations with them. And then I got the opportunity to do the potty dance for Huggies. And that was going to be debuted on Nickelodeon.
Okay.
Which is, at that point, Disney was in breach of our contract because they had not given me budget for a new album. So I called up David Agnew, who had signed me and who's my close confidant there, and told him about the opportunity. Actually, he had flown into town. He brought his wife and son to see a production of The 100 Dresses, one of my kids' musicals. So David and Paula and Edison had come in and joined us to go see 100 Dresses. And then he and I went out record shopping. I went to vinyl stores all over Chicago. And then we had lunch, and I told him about the opportunity to do the Huggy dance, the potty dance, but the wrinkle with it loading. He's like, yeah, if you should do that, you can't do that if you remain on Disney because of it debuting on Nickelodeon. So we said, on Monday, when I get back to LA, shoot me a note informing me that Disney is in breach of our contract, which we are, which is fine. We know that. And then I can release you from your contract with no penalty to you. So that's what we did on Monday. I sent him a note, and he released me from the contract so that I could do the potty dance. And then the crazy thing was, that Friday, and this was a complete surprise to everybody, that Friday was the day that they fired the head of Disney and hired Bob Iger.
Okay, wow.
Oh, wow.
They fired they fired whoever was there and hired Bob Iger. The first thing Bob Iger did, the very first thing he did when he took over, was fire my friend David Agnew, because David was so popular and so known for pursuing whatever he thought was right, that Iger didn't want him on the team. So the first thing he did that Bob Iger did was fire David Agnew. So then our note said, "Geez, David, sorry, if I'd have known that letting me go was going to cost you your job, I would have stayed as long as you needed me." Which is a joke.
Right.
Right.
But so that was really lucky timing. That because who knows, I wouldn't have had a voice inside the organization if I'd waited a week.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And then the interesting thing that happened a few years after that was I got a call from David, and he said, did you ever have the dream of owning your catalog? Because Disney had purchased the entire Minty Fresh catalog when they signed me. So they owned the first 7 albums, and then all the stuff I did with Disney. Disney owned everything, and they'd done all the videos and all the work that they'd broadcast on the channel, and they'd asked for a piece of the publishing. It was a 360 deal. And he said, "Did you ever dream of having your catalog back?" I'm like, "Yeah, next time." I mean, they bought it for $1 million, and they put another $1 million into it, with the videos and everything else. I said, "Yeah, next time I get a couple $1 million, I'm going to call you first." And he said, "No." He goes, "The way it works with Disney is once they determine that something is no longer generating profits, the business manager has the opportunity to sell it off and get 10% of whatever he sells it for as a bonus." Okay. I said, "Okay." He said, "Well, Chip is business manager. I mentored him. I was business manager before he was. I mentored him, and he's the business manager there now." He's like, "And I would love to kick his ass in a negotiation. Do I have your permission to do so?" So he went in as a true friend, and was able to negotiate me purchasing my entire catalog, videos and master tapes and publishing and artwork and everything. He was able to purchase it, negotiate for me to purchase it back from Disney at a fraction of what they'd put into it. So it was a really tremendous act of friendship that he did. And he signed me because he believed in what I did. And so I have no regrets of my time with Disney. I wish things would have gone farther with them, but
you wish you would have gotten to do more with them.
I wish I would have gotten to do more, and I wish we would have been able to really blow it up to be even bigger.
Yeah.
But it, but certainly they were the human beings in that office were some of the kindest, nicest, great folk.
Nice.
That's awesome. Also, since you mentioned do the Pyre Dance song, I want to mention a couple of other songs. Yeah, great song. There are other songs that we actually listened before we done this interview. We actually it was the Rhyming Circus and the Animal Friends and With the Friend, aka the Pooh song.
Yeah. Which I wrote that for. Oh, I wrote that for the. Oh, I'll tell you a story about that. Tell your thing first.
And those are great songs. So
thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Interesting Disney story. When they signed, one of the first things they asked me to do was write With a Friend, the Pooh song, because Winnie the Pooh was getting his star on Hollywood Boulevard, and they were re-releasing the Winnie the Pooh movie to theater.
Yeah.
That's why they had me write the song, so they could play it for the unveiling of the star, and then have it special for the movie coming out on, being re-released to theaters. So it was my first thing with them, and I wanted to really show them they made a smart decision. So I went back to the same studio that I had recorded the Ralph's World albums for Minty Fresh. I hired all the same musicians, and people that I'd known for years. All these folks I'd worked with for years. I'm like, I'm going to go and I'm going to give them a new song that's going to sound just like the stuff, and be another great song that sounds just like the stuff that they have on the records, right? They fell in love with.
Right.
So we go in and we do that session, and then the studio and all the musicians, and my recording budget had been negotiated with Disney based on what I'd paid for making all these records. I knew what it cost to make these records because I'd sat down with Minty Fresh and we'd mapped it out. I was hands-on, roll up my shirt sleeves, because I'd put out the Bad Example stuff on my own label. Back in the 90s, you didn't do that, right? That was before the whole DIY thing happened. Nobody their own records, but that with the Bad Examples, that's what we did. A good friend of mine had been national sales manager for Alligator Records, the Chicago blues label, and he'd always wanted to have his label. And I was able to sign a record deal with a European record label, but keep all the rights to America. And so then I took their recording advance and I borrowed some money from my dad, and we'd been working on Bad is Beautiful in the studio, making that album, just paying for it ourselves. And then all of a sudden we had this European record deal with an advance. And then we started Water Dog Records in America. Through Jay, there was a fellow named Bert Goldstein who had a national independent distribution company. Nobody had ever done that before, but Bert wanted to do it. So we were able to, in the early 90s, in 1991, we were able to release our records nationally without having a major label releasing the album, which again, back then you could not do that, but we found a way to do it. So I had been, with the Bad Examples, I had been very hands-on running a record label. So when I signed with Minty Fresh, one of the things I said to Jim was like, I'm not just some artist, I'm not some flaky artist. I know how this works. Let's sit down and roll our sleeves up together and do this work. Consider me an asset, not a rival. So I knew when I sat down with Disney, I knew all the numbers. I knew everything, be able to have to speak a business conversation with them, right? Recorded With a Friend, the Pooh song, and the recording studio and every single musician, people that I've been working with for years, gave me their bill afterwards. It was triple what I'd been paying them.
Wow.
And I was like, what am I missing? And they're like, oh, this is our major label rate. And I'm like, what? Before you indie artist, now you're on a major label. This is what major label artists pay for the same work. So I literally called up David Agnew and I said, we've got a problem. I can't afford to make you the album I promised you, because all of our budgets were based on what I've been paying for years, and what we started calling the Disney discount. As soon as I was on a major label, everybody charged me more for stuff they've been doing for years. It was the studio rate went from $650 to $2,000 a day.
Wow. That's crazy.
It was crazy. So, but what I said to David was, my solution is, I said, can I take the money that you gave me to record this next album, which was going to be a Rhyming Circus? I said, can I take that money and take, I had kind of kind of a really lo-fi, good enough for doing demos studio here at Waterdog. I said, can I invest that money in the gear I need to have a studio that I could make a record at? And David Agnew said, I don't care. I hired you because I trust you and you know what you're doing. You want to spend the money on building your own studio? Build your own studio. I don't care. I know whatever you give me is going to be great. So that's what we did with Rhyming Circus, is I took the money that was supposed to be going to other studios and I bought the gear so I could do the record here.
Nice.
So in that sense, we became fully DIY. But another example of the way that, you know, David Agnew and the folks at Disney were willing to say, you know, put complete faith in me and say, okay. But, you know, with a friend was the victim of the Disney discount. Most expensive song I ever recorded for Ralph's World.
That's fun.
Gosh.
That's funny. That is funny.
Mhm. So you've done some other work for Disney as well, especially partnering with Disney's English language learning program. Can you talk about that a little bit, what it is and what you've done for it?
Yeah, that was an amazing opportunity. They don't exist anymore, but Disney had an initiative where they built brick and mortar schools in China to teach English.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Oh,
That's cool.
He had like 70 or 80 schools, 70 or 80 locations across the country. They were teaching thousands and thousands of Chinese kids English. And it was a very brilliant music-driven curriculum. A gal named Julie Blore-Bizet ran it. She's working for one of the audiophile sense-around audio companies now. She's a brilliant lady. She might make it for an interesting interview. So because kids, if they love a song, they learn the song really easily. Their whole concept of the program was our curriculum will be baked into songs, and the kids will come into the classroom. They will learn the songs and they'll sing the songs and play to the songs. And then those songs will have the vocabulary and the speech structure and all the things that are in that lesson will be in the lyrics of the song. And then they would partner those songs with Disney animated content from the films and various Disney assets. So I got the job to write. Genevieve did some of those as well. I composed
Nice.
about 80 songs, composed,
Wow.
recorded, and produced about 80 or 90 songs. I don't even know how many.
oh my gosh.
And they would literally, they'd give me a brief. They'd give me them. They might give me 8 songs to be written, 8 briefs, and like one might be these vocabulary words, this sentence structure. It might have to be, is this a ball? This is a ball. Where is my ball? Here is my ball. Whatever it might be. This is the sentence structure. This is the vocabulary. These are the previous lessons that we're building on that you can draw from if you want. And in a lot of cases, and we're going to use animation from Sleeping Beauty with it. So if you can tie either the style of the music or the something into Sleeping Beauty, you know, that would be nice. Or one song where this song is going to have Toy Story animation, so we want it to sound like a Randy Newman song.
Yeah.
So then I would write demos of the songs. I send them off to Julie and her team, and in most cases they'd sign off. Sometimes they say no, adjust this, change that, and then they send them back. And then I'd have a week to write these 8 songs, and then I'd have 2 weeks to produce them and mix them and send them in for any last minute changes or tweaks, and then make those adjustments in the final week and then deliver. So it was a month turnaround. They'd give me, say, 6 songs or 10 songs or 8 songs or 12 songs. And then I'd have like a month to write them, record them, produce them, mix them, and make any changes or rewrites that they needed. So it was very intense. It was a great challenge. Certainly it fell into my, if it scares the shit out of me, I ought to do it philosophy. And it's something certainly, you know, is the kind of skill set that I think a lot of people it took a lot of different skill sets to be able to pull that off. You know, that's a lot of write and record in very little time.
Oh my gosh,
Definitely.
yes.
So, but that was a lot of, so yeah, we did like I said, probably 90 songs over that couple years.
Nice.
Nice.
And then they would use them, and they would use them in the classrooms in all these, just, you know, teaching kids English in China.
Wow.
There's some,
Wow.
there's a few that are on the internet because they were used as part of a license for like a French or Italian initiative. So there's some of them that you can see on the internet still.
Nice.
And yeah, they're great.
Nice.
Awesome.
Cool.
So
Steve Gerlach is a guy who played guitar in the Bad Examples, played a lot of those sessions, and he does some of my current shows I do with string quartet. Steve plays guitar, and a friend of mine named Michael Hardigan plays piano. But Steve, like, sometimes one of those songs well played, he's like, I have no memory of that. We did so many songs for a period of time. He'll be like, is that me on that? I'm like, yeah. Sounds like me.
oh my gosh, no way.
I have no memory of this. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
So aside from Disney, touring with Ralph's World, do you have any favorite touring locations?
Boy. You know, I love the big shows, and the little shows are both fun. You know, I've played all the big music festivals. I played Lollapalooza, Austin City Limits, Pilgrimage in Nashville. I played at New York Central Park. I played with the, you know, different symphony orchestras. I'll be back. I played at Ravinia here in Chicagoland. I'll be back there this summer. That's wonderful. Ravinia is one of these big,
Nice.
you know, outdoor music festivals. I'm there Saturday, June 24th.
Oh,
So-
cool.
Now it's like 2 days. That's like 2 days before my birthday, because my birthday's actually 26.
That was my mom's birthday. Hey.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's cool. Wow.
That's cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Wow.
But then I also love, like, I do a lot of library shows. I'm a real big believer and supporter of early reading stuff. So I love doing, you know, intimate shows in libraries. They kind of remind me of the Wiggle Worm days. And I love getting, you know, close and personal with kids and getting them bouncing off the walls and having fun. I love the big shows and the little shows. You know, doing the shows with symphony orchestra was fun and crazy because, you know, again, I like finding, like, what I do. My friend Michael helped me do this, but one of the things I did with this symphony orchestra show was I took the song Happy Lemons, and if this is available online too, I think the DuPage Symphony version is live on YouTube. I did a thing where I played Happy Lemons with the orchestra, and then I challenged the conductor to a kind of a battle of the bands, where I challenge, and it's, of course, it's prearranged and pre-written, right? But I'm like, yeah, you guys think you're pretty good, but can you play Happy Lemons as if it was a Bach fugue? And she's like, oh, we can do this. And then the orchestra plays Happy Lemons as a Bach fugue. And then I'm like, oh, that was pretty good, but can you do it like Stravinsky? So just try to, like, you know, again, doing something that just seems impossible or seems crazy and silly. You know, I'm up there in front of a symphony orchestra doing a battle of the bands with the orchestra. You know, that's just fun.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Hmm.
So that's available out there.
That's cool.
Nice.
That's cool.
Nice.
I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, as well.
Yep. Wonderful.
And then,
So,
and I still do Ralph's World stuff. I still do Bad Example stuff. And then the third thing I do is these shows with Steve Gerlach on guitar, my friend Michael Hardigan on piano, both of them singing, and then with a string quartet.
Oh, nice.
So those are really, those are just, it's such a great palette of colors to work with.
Awesome.
And those, if you, it's sideways, you'll have to lock your screen if you want to turn it and not get a headache because Facebook glitched. But it's on my Ralph Covert music, my @Ralph Covert Music Facebook page where I broadcast my Staycation show still. You can see me with Mike and Steve and string quartet to get a taste of that.
Nice.
Last weekend. Or
Nice.
2 weeks.
Nice.
Awesome. Awesome.
very cool. So, aside from recording and performing, you created the Ralph's World TV Treehouse concert series.
Yes.
How did that come about?
Well, one of the things, one of my mottos when COVID started was full pivot forward. Because everything that we had been able to do, we couldn't do. So I'm like, well, what can I do different? So one of the things that I came up with was I'd started doing the Playcation and Staycation shows. A company that managed malls asked me if I would record them a couple of those that they could broadcast in the malls. And I said, I'll do you one better because I've got these. You can see here, I'm on the TV Treehouse set here at Waterdog, which, stepping back, in 2011 and 12, we shot the pilot for the Time Machine Guitar TV series. We got all the way to, we showcased it at the American Public Television conference. We pitched it to Disney, Nickelodeon, the commercial networks. They didn't want it, but public television was interested. We pitched it at the APT conference. We had a public television nationwide was going to pick it up. We had the scripts written, working with Pam and Jim, and we're ready to shoot our first season. Less than a month before the first day of shooting, the producer that was providing the financing for it, they having nothing to do with us, but having to do with another project they were involved with, they went belly up. So less than a month before shooting the Time Machine Guitar TV series for public television, we had to cancel. So, but as a result of that, I had, I have the set built, have all the puppets. So when this mall come, and I had tried doing stuff through the years, like how can I use these assets to do something? I've tried videos, I've tried stuff, but we couldn't find a way to do it that was cost effective. Mm-hmm. But I've been doing the Playcation and Staycation shows, and this mall company said, we'd like 3, 40-minute episodes of you singing, playing acoustic like you do on Playcation. I said, well, how about I do you one better? I'll do it with my puppets on the set. And they're like, sure, that's fine. Whatever you want to do, we're going to pay you to do this. And we want 3 40-minute things of you singing. If you want to add puppets, cool, even better. So we did it. But it was very lo-fi. It was me, and then at the time, my 11-year-old son, Jude, he operated the puppet for Ronnie that Pam had done. And then my audio engineer, Jonathan Pollock, he ran sound, set up the camera, and then ran the puppets for Beauregard and Malcolm.
Oh, nice.
And so literally we made these three episodes for this mall company with an 11-year-old and an audio engineer and me, because it was COVID. You couldn't have people around, right? We didn't have any choice. The mall company realized, and this was the first spring of COVID, so we made these for them in April. And when I called up in May and said, "Do you want us to make some more episodes?" They said, "No. We've talked to our team, and COVID's going to pass. Everyone's going to be back 100% by beginning of June, so we don't need any more." Let me say this again. The first spring of COVID, May 1st, they're like, "It's going to be done by the end of May."
Wow.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wah, wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, way wrong.
I normally would do the library touring, right?
Mm-hmm.
None of the libraries could do library events. So I started calling up these libraries that I'd been doing live events for, and I said, I made these, me playing acoustic with puppets. Would this be of interest for you to share virtually with your patrons? So then I started making the shows for the libraries that I'd been playing live shows for. So that's when we started doing more. So we kept doing those. We did those to sell those to the libraries to help them out because they didn't have any content. So that's when we started doing those. And then that's for the TV Treehouse series. And then as we did it, we just figured out more and more how to do it and got better and better at it. And then I had an opportunity that didn't pan out, but we had an opportunity to have a small network wanted to broadcast them. And so we edited them all down to consistent network size and added enough new episodes so that we had a full 24 episodes. But then that deal fell through. So we ended up 4 network length episodes that we then put on YouTube. But it was what an amazing journey that was. I mean, when we first started, we had no clue. And by the end of it, I got a thing this last Thanksgiving, of all people, Viacom, same people that have Nickelodeon.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And said, would you do an episode that we can share for our employees for our virtual holiday party?
Oh, wow.
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 I finally made a show for Nickelodeon, but for the kids and parents.
Yeah.
But it was amazing because, we had done all of the shows we made.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it was weird because it's like, wow, we know exactly how to do this.
Yeah.
Like, cool. We did it. I wrote it. We shot it. It was like, bam, bam, bam. It was like, dang, I know how to make a TV show. So.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it was a fun journey, and I respect you guys as puppeteers. It's really an amazing art form.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's wonderful.
Definitely.
Yes.
So where can people find it, the TV Treehouse series?
It's on my YouTube channel at Ralph's World Video.
Nice.
So find me.
Nice.
Awesome.
If you Google
Very nice.
Treehouse, it's there.
Nice. So no,
Awesome.
we're getting close to wrapping up, but we got a couple more questions, but I will say this has definitely been fun so far. Very
Yes.
fun
Okay.
chat.
Yes.
And I know you also just recently did an interview with one of our good friends, DJ Bob Runkel, on
Yes.
the DJ Bob show.
Yes.
Oh,
He's such
wonderful.
a great guy.
And
Wonderful.
he helps out as a producer on our podcast too. Like he helps us.
Yep.
Nice people help. Well, that's the way it goes.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Bob's great. I've known him for almost 7 years now, so
Amazing.
we go back a bit.
Yeah.
We go back a bit.
That's awesome.
Yep. Yeah, he's wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Yes.
And Matt is actually executive producer on his show.
Oh, nice.
Yep. Yeah, I've been executive producer now for, I think, since late December, early January, I've been executive producer of that, and it's very fun. I enjoy it a lot. Bob is just wonderful.
Yeah.
a blast.
Great guy to work with.
Oh yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah,
Great
definitely.
guy to work with.
Definitely.
So overall, what do you enjoy most about your work in the music business?
Well, the other thing you guys can check out is, I was gonna say, songwriting. I love, because I'm the same kid I was in second grade. I, you know, my job is I create things. I love writing songs and recording them and sharing them and playing them. I love my Staycation shows. I love doing this stuff with the string quartet. I love rocking with the full band examples. I was gonna say, I did a TED talk a few years ago on songwriting, and I think it's got 1.5 million views now.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow,
So
that's cool.
kind of
Oh,
fun.
gosh.
And you know, songwriting probably is at the core of what I do. You know, if there's a pure core to what I do, it's songwriting. But I love, you know, I love all the pieces. I love being creative, and I love changing the world one song at a time. You know, if I can make a difference with my music, make somebody's life a little better, have a song that connects to somebody when they're sad or scared, or inspire somebody. You know, I've heard from many people that are adults now who were inspired to become musicians because of, you know, Ralph's World music as a kid.
Aw.
I hear, like, it makes me grateful for that opportunity. And another thing that I've heard again and again, I'm told by people who work with autistic kids that autistic kids seem to particularly connect with my music. There's something about the way that it's not dumbed down that I'm told from teachers that work with autistic kids that I've heard dozens of stories of kids that were nonverbal and weren't able to engage, and the conduit that they broke through and became social and verbal and able to connect was through my music. They would fall in love with the music, start singing it, and then find their voice as a person through that. And you hear stories like that, and it just, I can't even, deeply it humbles me.
Oh.
I'm starting to choke up as I say it, because it's like that matters, you know. We say in the bad examples, we don't care about award shows, we don't care about hit records, but if you're singing our song while you're doing the dishes, or if it matters if you fall in love with somebody, sharing one of our songs, that matters. You know, where is it? So that was always the rubric we applied with the bad examples, and I stand by that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful. So, besides being a musician and singer-songwriter, you've also co-written a few plays and musicals. Can you talk a bit about those?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Gary Mills, was in a theater company called the Dog Boys in the 90s. They were a really amazing theater group. They made all the sound effects of their show were done by the cast members on stage. It was a very intense form of theater. And I went to see them and I fell in love with their work. And then Gary and I started writing plays together. And we ended up writing Streeterville, which is about a true Chicago guy who created 180 acres by running his ship aground. It's an amazing story. And then we also wrote a play called Sawdust and Spangles about a real life circus pioneer.
Oh, wow.
So we wrote those two plays. They both won Best New Work of the year they came out. And then when Ralph's World took off, we started getting commissions, people wanting us to write children's musicals. And so we wrote a bunch of musicals, which have, some of them have been made into picture books. Some of them are still produced and performed today. Our version of Eleanor Estes' young adult novel, The 100 Dresses, ran off Broadway. So just, you know, and again, playwriting and acting was something I always loved. And then to collaborate with a playwright as talented as Gary is It was always a joy. And again, it scared the shit out of me, so why not?
Yeah. Again, like
Yeah.
I said earlier, you know, it's good to challenge yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do things
You have
that
to make
are
yourself, better with something.
and like you said, you know, it's good to do things, you know, sometimes that are out of your comfort zone to kind of, you know, do things different.
And then more, if you keep doing it, you'll be getting used to it, and and you can probably be in your comfort zone after that,
Yeah.
Yeah.
In one of my songs, there's a line, if you're not failing, you're probably not trying. A lot of people are afraid of failing, and I'm like, well, failing is a good sign.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, to
Exactly.
keep on getting better. It's not like where I fail on this. Like, no, failing is is a part of being successful. So
Yeah.
it's
Yes. Definitely.
So I'm working in the music industry. What are some of the biggest challenges you say you faced in the field?
Oh, there's just getting noticed, and I just remembering that what you do, that kind of bad examples philosophy, living that, right? The idea that if you don't have a hit record, or if you're not playing for 100,000 people, or if you're not, that's not what you measure it by. And so just remembering to do it for the right reasons. Why do the due diligence of the business stuff, and you try to do it right, but you can't judge yourself by it. So that's probably the hardest part. Is accepting that it is what it is, and being grateful for where you are.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So now, what piece of advice would you give to anyone who wants to get into music and singing?
I would say you don't do it because you want to do it. You only do it because if you try to do anything else, you'll be miserable. That's the only reason to do it, is because you can't not do it. And just I guess the one piece of advice I would, you need to give it your all, right?
Oh, yeah.
A friend of mine, and her son actually plays oboe with us in the string quartet, these acoustic shows. You'll see him on stage if you watch that video. But when he was getting close to the end of high school and trying to figure out what he wanted to do with college, he really wanted to study oboe. And his mom and dad are friends of mine, and she called me up and she goes, I don't know what to tell because my family is giving me so much pressure about what's his backup plan. What do I tell them? What's his backup plan? They just won't shut up. I'm getting so much peer pressure from parents and siblings and friends. I don't know what I'm feeling like I'm losing my ability to give my son what he needs. What should I tell him? What should we do? And I said, well,
yeah.
I said, well, what is his current plan? He's like, well, his current plan is he wants to be an oboe player in a symphony. That's his dream, his goal. And with him for a backup plan, maybe teaching, or maybe maybe some kind of a corporate or accounting job. He likes numbers, so maybe he could do something like that to pay the rent. We're trying to figure out how do you structure the main plan and the backup plan. I said, you're looking at it all wrong. I said, tell him that his first plan should not be to be a professional musician in a symphony. His first plan should be to be the #1 call, best ever oboe soloist in the history of music. His backup plan should be to be a professional oboist in a symphony.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So, and I told her that, and she's like, oh my God, it made sense. She told him that, and they said, now we have a plan and we have a backup plan. And that's what they told their family. from then on. They said, this is his plan. This is his backup plan.
Oh, that's great.
And he's approached it with that attitude. I mean, he's amazing.
Oh,
That's awesome.
So that would be my advice. Would be thinking of it in that kind of.
Nice.
yeah. And there's,
Very
you
nice.
know, and there's also, you know, if that's what you really want to do, then go for it, you know.
Just do it.
Yeah. But do it, don't under challenge yourself.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Company was not giving him the true lift he needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. So turning the tables, what's the best piece of advice that you have received as a musician and singer-songwriter?
I think it's not really advice, but I think a combination of three things of my parents' example. My dad, who's still alive at 94, bless him, engineer and tremendously organized and tremendously high expectations for himself. I internalized that. My mom was an artist, and so I grew up just watching her constantly creating, constantly challenging herself, constantly having her in the house being creative all the time seemed like the most natural thing in the world.
Mhm.
But then that combined with my youngest sister, who mosaic Down syndrome, and my parents, my entire life, were fighting to get her mainstreamed. Back before that was a thing, like every school after school, she'd be the first kid that was ever mainstreamed in that school.
Mhm.
And they'd move, and then they'd go through the battle again. And you know, watching them advocate for her and fight for her and never quit, right? Taught me about that aspect. That's something, that aspect of absolute ferocity of intent. I learned from that experience with Nancy and my parents. And somehow out of all that, like I said, from a very early age, my personality was such that I don't know, I just was that second grade kid from that first story, you know, just wanting to be creative. So
Definitely.
my biggest advice to me wasn't so much a piece of advice, but it was kind of the bigger advice of those shaping experiences, I think, if I had to be really reflective about it.
Nice. Nice. So for fans of the bad examples in Ralph's world, are there any words you'd like to say to the people who have supported your work over the years?
Thank you for being amazing. I have the
Oh,
best fans in the world. They are amazing human beings. I'm grateful. The kind of people that seem attracted to my music are uniformly amazing. I'm grateful for that. I was doing it. We talked about record store in stores. I was doing an in-store at the Virgin Records in Chicago years ago, and it was a Ralph's World show. And one of the things they used to do at the in-stores is they would give you, they wouldn't pay you, but they'd give you a gift certificate for some CDs, right?
Yeah.
Buy, you get $30 worth of CDs. So I'm like looking through the CDs after the show, and the guy next to me elbows me and kind of bumps me. It's Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins.
Oh, wow.
The Samples and the Pumpkins were on the scene at the same time, so we knew each other.
Okay.
And Bill, he's just there shopping. He just stopped by to shop and happened to watch the Ralph's World show. And Matt Walker, who was replaced Jimmy Chamberlain in the Pumpkins and does all the programming for Billy's solo records. Matt played on all the Ralph's World records.
Wow.
Small community, right? So we knew a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
Anyway,
Small world too.
Billy knew the Ralph's World stuff before the first Ralph's World album came out, because Matt would play him my demos of the first album. He played Billy the Ralph's World before it was released.
Wow.
So anyway, but Billy's there and he elbows me. He's like, yeah. He's like, your fans are still better than my fans. My fans suck. They just news and they look like they want to, like they're so depressed they want to kill themselves. Your fans, they still dance and smile. My fans suck. I love your fans.
That's great.
Oh my gosh.
And I said, your fans sure love you, and you got a few million more than I do. He's like, there's that. I'm not complaining. Anyway, good to see you today. What you buying? I'm buying this. Oh, cool. This is what I'm buying.
So if people want to connect, if people would like to connect with you, where can people find you or your work?
RalphCovert.com, ralphsworld.com. These days, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, I do my Staycation shows on Twitch, 8 p.m. Central, twitch.tv/Ralph Covert. And on Facebook Live, I do Wednesdays and Fridays at Ralph Covert Music. And there's hundreds and hundreds of shows on that page from the last couple of years, so people can dig back into the archives. So,
nice. Awesome.
And whatever streaming service they listen to, I'm there.
Yeah.
Nice. And your everything on your social media will be in the description down below, so people can check it out and follow you and everything.
Yes. Yeah. So since we're about to wrap up, Jake, why don't you take us home with the last question?
Yes.
Which we ask at the end of all of our interviews.
Yes, we sure do. So, of course, this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. When you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define your own words of how you define the word nostalgia?
Oh, I would say art, music, shows, whatever form of art it is, painting, that remind you of times when you were happy, and ways to connect the person you are now with the dreams and aspirations of the person you were then.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Great words.
Great words. Awesome. Well, Ralph, thank you so much. This is a blast.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you. And thank you so much, for being on, and thank you for, for what you've done, being part of our lives, and keep up your great work and see what's next for you, Ralph.
I'm looking forward to whatever comes next. It's going to be exciting. And
awesome.
All continued success and happiness to you guys. Appreciate the
yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Yes.
Awesome.
For me, as an avid Playhouse Disney watcher, I grew up, watching your music videos. So I'm glad that we were able to do this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. Now, and now we can say that we're friends, and same with Bob as well.
Yep.
Yes. Yes, of course. Well, and to all of our viewers and listeners, this brings a another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview to a close. We've absolutely
Yes.
enjoyed our time with Ralph Covert.
Yes, thank you again, Rob. Appreciate
Thank you.
having you here.
And
Thank
stop by Staycation anytime if you do, because if you do watch a Staycation show, make sure you pop into the comments and say hi, because the folks there are nice, funny people, and they would love to say hi. And you can come on the show and just come on and say hi.
Oh,
Nice.
awesome. Nice.
we'd
We
be more
will do
than
that.
happy
We
to
do.
that.
More than happy
We'll
to.
do that.
Yeah,
We'll
Bob.
do that.
He's watched a few, and he's like, "Hey, it's me, Bob. Hey, Bob."
Hey, Bob. Hey, Bob.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And they'd be like, oh, hey, Jay, or
We'll
Chris.
do that. We will absolutely do that.
I would like
Yes.
you to.
That's awesome. Well, from all of us to all of you, thanks for tuning into another interview, and remember to
Yes.
keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye,
Yes, take care, everyone.
everybody.
See you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye. Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.